Arsenal are in the Champions League semi-finals, and for the first time in a long time, the whole of Europe is not just watching, they are paying attention. Now let's be honest for a second. If someone told you at the start of this season that Arsenal would reach back-to-back semi-finals of the Champions League for the first time in their history, would you have believed it? Probably not. Not because the team lacked quality, but because at this level, consistency is everything. And yet here we are. Arsenal have done it. They are in the final four of European football again, and the path to the final is now very real. But here is where everything changes, because qualification is one thing, what comes next is something completely different. Atletico Madrid are waiting, and their manager, Diego Simeone, has already sent a message about this Arsenal team that has caught everyone's attention. A message that on the surface sounds like praise, but underneath could mean something much deeper. Before we get into that, let's go back to what actually happened against Sporting, because that performance tells us everything about where Arsenal really are right now. Yes, they went through. Yes, the job was done. But let's not pretend it was comfortable. That 0-0 draw at the Emirates was not a performance that makes you feel dominant. It was tense. It was nervous. And at times, it felt like Arsenal were holding on rather than controlling the situation. Sporting came with nothing to lose, and that made them dangerous. They pressed aggressively, they disrupted Arsenal's rhythm, and for long periods they looked like the team more likely to score. That moment when Jenny Catamo hit the post, that was not just a chance. That was a warning. Because if that goes in, the entire tie changes. Suddenly, Arsenal are under pressure, the crowd becomes anxious, and the control they thought they had disappears. And this is the key issue. Arsenal are controlling games, but they are not always killing them. There is a difference. Control gives you comfort. Killing games gives you dominance. Against Sporting, Arsenal had control, but they never fully secured the outcome through their own attacking quality. And that is something that becomes a major problem when you are about to face a team like Atletico Madrid. Now let's talk about the moment that lifted the stadium, because it says a lot about where this team is emotionally. Max Daumann. 16 years old, still in school, and yet when he came on, he brought something the entire team had been lacking. Energy, fearlessness, unpredictability. The fact that a teenager came on and immediately injected life into the game tells you something important. Arsenal, at that point, looked tired, flat, almost mentally drained. And that brings us to the uncomfortable truth. This team is feeling the weight of the season. The Premier League title race, the Champions League, injuries, expectations, it is all adding up. You could see it in the way Gyökeres struggled. You could see it in the way passes were slightly off. You could see it in the hesitation in the final third. These are not massive issues individually, but together they create a picture of a team that is not at full intensity. Now here is where Diego Simeone enters the conversation. Because Simeone has reportedly described Arsenal as the best team Atletico Madrid have faced this season. He praised their intensity, their tactical discipline, their structure. He even went as far as comparing this Arsenal team to his Atletico Madrid side from 2014. That team reached the Champions League final. That team was built on resilience, organisation, and the ability to suffer and still win. Now let that sink in. A manager like Diego Simeone, who has built one of the toughest, most disciplined teams in modern football, is comparing Arsenal to his best ever side. That is not a casual statement. That is not something he says lightly. So the question becomes, why? Is it genuine respect? Or is it something else? Because Simeone is not just a manager, he is a strategist. Every word he says has a purpose. And this is where things get interesting. When a manager praises an opponent this much before a semi-final, it can mean two things. Either he genuinely sees them as a major threat, or he is setting a psychological trap. By calling Arsenal the best team they have faced, Simeone shifts the pressure. Suddenly, Arsenal are not the underdogs anymore. They are the team expected to deliver, the team expected to justify that praise. And that is where things can become dangerous, because pressure changes how teams play. But here is the deeper layer. What Simeone said is not entirely wrong. Arsenal do have similarities to that 2014 Atletico side. They are defensively strong, they are structured, they are difficult to break down. 8 clean sheets in 12 Champions League games is not a coincidence. That is identity, that is discipline, that is a system working at a high level. However, there is one key difference. That Atletico side was ruthless, and right now, Arsenal are not consistently ruthless enough. This is where the entire semi-final will be decided. Because Atletico Madrid will not give Arsenal many chances. They will sit deep, they will defend compactly, they will wait for mistakes, and when those moments come, they will take them. That is what Simeone teams do. They do not dominate games in the traditional sense, they control outcomes. So if Arsenal approach this game the same way they approach Sporting, there is a problem. Because against Atletico, you cannot afford to be passive in attack. You cannot rely on one moment to get you through. You have to create multiple high-quality chances, and more importantly, you have to take them. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture, because this is not just about one match or one performance. This is about where Arsenal are as a club right now. Under Mikel Arteta, this team has gone from rebuilding to competing at the highest level. That transformation is real, it is visible, and reaching back-to-back semi-finals proves it. But now comes the hardest part, turning progress into success. Because at this level, nobody remembers semi-finals. They remember finals. They remember trophies. And this Arsenal team is now at that exact point where they have to take the next step. The schedule ahead makes it even more intense. Manchester City in the Premier League, Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. These are not just games, these are defining moments. Moments that will tell us whether Arsenal are ready to win or still learning how to. And this is where mentality becomes everything. Because talent is not the issue, structure is not the issue. The question is whether Arsenal can handle the pressure of expectation, whether they can play with the same intensity when the stakes are at their highest, whether they can go from controlling games to deciding them. Simeone's statement, whether intentional or not, has placed Arsenal in a position where they must respond, not with words, but with performance. Because now the narrative is set. Arsenal are seen as one of the best teams in Europe. They are respected, they are feared. But respect alone does not win matches, execution does. So as we look ahead to this semi-final, everything becomes very clear. Arsenal have the structure, they have the defensive strength, they have the tactical discipline, but they must add one more thing, clinical edge. Because against Atletico Madrid, chances will be rare, space will be limited, and moments will define everything. This is not going to be an open game. This is going to be a battle. A game of patience, discipline, and precision. And in games like that, the team that makes fewer mistakes and takes its chances wins. So now it comes down to one simple question. Are Arsenal ready to become that team? Not the team that impresses, not the team that controls, but the team that finishes the job. Because this is the stage where everything changes. This is where good teams become great. This is where potential becomes history. Arsenal have already done something no other team in their history has done by reaching back-to-back semi-finals. That alone is significant. But now they have the opportunity to go even further, to reach a final, to compete for the biggest prize in club football. And standing in their way is a manager who knows exactly what it takes to get there. Diego Simeone. A man who has already walked this path. A man who understands these moments better than most. And a man who has just sent a message that might be respect, or might be a challenge. Now it is up to Arsenal to respond. Do you think Arsenal are ready for Atletico Madrid over 2 legs? Do you believe Simeone's words are genuine respect or mind games? And most importantly, do you think this is finally Arsenal's year in Europe? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Stay analytical, stay locked in, and as always, come on you Gunners.